needs game 3 more? Raptors or Sixers?
I'm going to say the Raptors. And the reason why I'm going to say the Raptors is obviously you don't have home court advantage, and you want home court advantage. The Raptors have shown the ability at times, no matter how formidable they are, no matter how elite they are, because they are one of the elite teams in the NBA, Max, they've shown a willingness or a propensity to nosedive for a game or two or whatever the case may be. Now, usually they're on high alert, particularly, when as the series wanes or as the season even waned, when they're on their home court. You got home court advantage in this series. It was snatched from you in game 2. You want to immediately get it back. You don't want to continue to give the Philadelphia 76ers any momentum. Joel Embiid is averaging 14 points a game in this series. 14 points. Your leading scorer in this series is Jimmy Butler at 20 points per game because he dropped 30 in game 2 after scoring just 10 in game 1. When you look at the Sixers and a guy like Ben Simmons, for example, averaging, 10 points or whatever the case may be, he's shooting 71% from the field, but he's averaging just 10 points a game in this series. You have to look at the Sixers and ask yourself, how long is this going to last? Ultimately, they're going to capture momentum. Meanwhile, Max, if you look at the Toronto Raptors, Kawhi Leonard is averaging 40. 40. Pascal Siakam, my most improved player of the year, is averaging 25 and 7. Kawhi is at 40 and 9. Outside of that, even though your next scorer is Kyle Lowry at 14.5 points, he's shooting, 40% from the field, 20% from three-point range, and you don't have anybody else scoring in double figures. You got to believe that in a playoff series, as the playoffs continue to go deeper and deeper, they're going to figure certain things out where you're not averaging 40 or your secondary player isn't averaging 29, that somehow, some way, they're going to force somebody else to beat them. And so if you're the Toronto Raptors, the quicker you regain home court advantage, thus helping to ensure that a potential Game 7 will be on your home court, the better it is. The last thing you need to do, Max, is give the Sixers additional momentum. You want to stifle it and stymie it as soon as possible, because if the Sixers gather momentum, you could be in some trouble if you're Toronto.
Look, the Sixers got a road split, so they took home court. They have to defend their home court now because they're the underdog. We all expect, or most of us expect, the Toronto Raptors to win this series. If Toronto goes to Philadelphia and grabs Game 1 in Philly, Game 3 overall, and swings it right back to them, Philly's sunk. They're not good enough to stay with Toronto. Ben Simmons he's a baby still. I mean, he's an excellent player. And I think, a Greek freak type player in waiting. But we still got to wait. If you walk away from the freak, he can a 3. That's not Ben Simmons yet. And Joel Embiid has health issues. I mean, let's face it. The back, the knee, gastroenteritis, whatever it is, the reason they got him with the 3rd overall pick in the draft once upon a time is because he is a giant. And you have to see how those kind of guys at that size, how their health holds up. And his is held up well enough to certainly justify the number 3 pick. He's an MVP caliber player when he's out there. But we saw it this time last year. He can't really get to the kind of game shape he needed to play with Al Horford, right? And he got. And Marc Gasol is defending him very well now. And they have Siakam and Ibaka and these guys, and they have size that can bother Embiid. Jimmy Butler, a clutch player, but that's not going to be enough to beat the Raptors. They must defend home court, the Sixers. The pressure is on them. They're the team that needs Game 3. Toronto can lose Game 3 and still win this series in like 6 games. Look, Stephen A., Siakam's probably not going to have another game like the one he just had. And if he does, you lament the fact that others haven't really been putting up numbers. But it's not like they don't have guys who could put up numbers. They have guys who can score on this team. Toronto has veteran. Think about the design of the team. Kyle Lowry, your dribble penetrator. He's had his playoff problems, although better recently. Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Siakam. I mentioned Gasol, Ibaka. They got Van Vliet off the bench. They just keep coming at you. They're better than the Sixers. It's why they won more regular season games. The Sixers must defend home court.
Max, I'm not saying this to you to rub it in. I'm being in all seriousness about what I'm about to say. You said the same thing about the Raptors last year, and they got swept. Now, it was to LeBron, and I get it. but they didn't lose. Forget the fact that they lost the series, because I understand what LeBron.
Stephen A., just a heads up, I've lost you. I don't know,
me
Max,
too.
can you hear him?
I can't hear him, no.
And I'm not sure if the folks
hear
at
me?
home
Y'all can't hear
can.
me?
I'd have to check in with the producers, but I'm not hearing him
Oh, they
right
say
now.
you can hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Now we got you.
Okay.
Now we
Got
got
you.
you.
Okay, you got me now. Okay, here's what I'm saying. When you look at the Raptors, I'm not rubbing this in, Max. I'm using it to make a point. You picked the Raptors last year. They had won 59 games. They were clearly a better team during the regular season, but look at LeBron James and how he handled them. You picked them to win. Not only did they lose, they got swept. And the reason why they got swept is because they didn't measure up to expectations. What I'm saying to you, they're a different team this year because they have Kawhi Leonard as opposed to DeMar DeRozan. I get that. But what I'm saying to you is that the parts around them are the same victims that they've been in the past. Kyle Lowry, what is it right here? I'm looking at his numbers right here. He's shooting 40% from the field, 20% from three-point range. Danny Green, Max, 23% from the field, 20% from three-point range. You got a two-man wrecking crew that can ball. If you're the Sixers and you find a way to force somebody else to beat you, there's nobody else for the Toronto Raptors that's shown a willingness to do it. So all I'm talking about is this. I'm not saying that Toronto isn't better than Philadelphia on paper. Clearly they had a better regular season. Clearly they have the superstar in this league in Kawhi Leonard, because Joel Embiid is trying to get to where we know Kawhi Leonard is. But my point is, if you allow the Sixers to win Game 3 after winning Game 2, then there's a momentum that's swelling. And I've seen nothing from the Toronto Raptors that tells me they can stymie or quell that if it happens. This is not Orlando. These are the Philadelphia 76ers. And if they smell blood, and you've been, because I've been to a Sixers game, Max, you've been there while you were taping Creed. You came to Wells Fargo Center. You see how that crowd is. You know how the team feeds off that crowd.